The assembly hall was quiet. Too quiet for a room filled with representatives from 47 different alien species. Captain Dae-hyun stood at the center of the chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. His uniform was crisp and clean, decorated with medals from 3 decades of service. Next to him stood Dr. Hae-won, wearing the simple gray robes of the Human Science Council. Neither of them moved. Above them, the voting display showed the final count in bright blue numbers. 38 species voted yes, 7 voted no, 2 abstained. The decision was final. Humanity would be expelled from the Galactic Assembly. Counselor Vreth rose from his seat. He was a Mantillian, tall and covered in silver scales that reflected the chamber lights. His voice echoed through the hall when he spoke. "The decision is made. Humanity has proven itself too dangerous to remain among civilized species. The accident on Vrelian 6 claimed 200 innocent lives. This was not the first incident, and it would not be the last." Dae-hyun listened without expression. The accident had been terrible. A human mining team had tried a new drilling technique without proper authorization. The mine collapsed. 200 Vrelian workers died in the cave-in. Humans died too, but that did not matter now. The galaxy had made up its mind. "You are reckless," Vreth continued. "You break protocols. You take risks that endanger others. You wage wars among yourselves. You refuse to follow the established ways. The Assembly cannot tolerate such chaos." Other counselors nodded. Some looked uncomfortable, but they said nothing. The vote was done. Dae-hyun waited until Vreth finished. Then he stepped forward. The chamber fell silent again. Everyone expected arguments. They expected humans to defend themselves, to plead, to present evidence. That was how these things usually went. Instead, Dae-hyun bowed slightly. "The Assembly has spoken," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "We accept your decision. Humanity will withdraw from all Assembly territories within 6 months. We will honor all treaties and agreements during our departure. We will leave nothing behind that would cause problems." Dr. Hae-won stepped forward next. "We understand your concerns," she said. "We respect the Assembly's judgment. We will begin preparations immediately." That was all. No arguments, no anger, no desperate speeches about friendship or alliance, just acceptance. Counselor Vreth looked surprised. He had prepared for a long fight. He had documents ready, more accusations, more evidence of human danger. But he did not need them now. Ambassador Quilks, a Fentari with blue skin and large eyes, watched from his seat. He had abstained from the vote. Something about this felt wrong to him. Humans were unpredictable, yes. They were strange and often difficult to understand. But they had also saved his homeworld once. A human medical team had stopped a plague that killed millions. They had worked for 30 hours straight without rest. They had figured out solutions that Fentari doctors never considered. Quilks leaned toward his aide. "They are not fighting back," he whispered. "Why are they not fighting back?" The aide had no answer. Dae-hyun turned to leave. Dr. Hae-won followed. The other human representatives rose from their seats and walked out in a single line. They did not look at anyone. They did not speak. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. The door closed behind them. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the counselors began to talk among themselves. Some celebrated. Others looked uncertain. A few, like Quilks, sat quietly and wondered what they had just done. Outside the chamber, Dae-hyun and Hae-won walked through the crystal corridors of Veron Prime's government complex. Other humans joined them. Nobody spoke until they reached their transport. "That went exactly as we expected," Hae-won said finally. She looked tired. "They voted with their fear, not their reason." Dae-hyun nodded. "We gave them no excuse to escalate. No drama, no conflict, just acceptance." Will they regret it? Asked a younger officer. Dae-hyun climbed into the transport. That is not our concern anymore. We have 6 months. We need to bring everyone home. The transport lifted off, carrying them away from the heart of galactic government. Below, Varen Prime sparkled like a jewel. Millions of beings from dozens of worlds lived and worked there. Humans had helped build parts of it. Human engineers designed the water systems. Human programmers wrote security software. Human teachers worked in the universities. All of that would end now. Hye-won looked at her datapad. Messages were already flooding in from humans across assembly space. Station managers asking for instructions, military commanders requesting clarification, civilians wanting to know if they really had to leave their homes. Send the recall order, Dae-hyun said. Everyone comes home, no exceptions. We have 6 months, but I want to be done in 5. Some will not want to leave, Hye-won said. They have built lives here, families, businesses. The assembly voted, Dae-hyun replied. We respect that vote. All humans leave. Over the next few days, the news spread across the galaxy. Humans were being expelled. Some species celebrated, others worried. Many did not think much about it at all. Humans made up less than 2% of the assembly population. How much difference could they make? On Korvax Ring Station, engineer Sung-min received the recall order while eating lunch. He read it 3 times. Then he looked around the station's engineering bay. He had worked here for 15 years. He knew every pipe, every wire, every quirk of the life support system. The system was old and temperamental. It needed constant attention. You had to listen to it, feel when something was wrong before the sensors caught it. Sung-min had already trained his replacement. A young Korvax engineer named Tillix, smart kid. Good with numbers, but he had only been here for 8 months. That was not enough time to really understand the station. Still, orders were orders. Sung-min began packing his tools. Across the galaxy, pilot Ji-woo landed her cargo ship at a deep space mining facility. She delivered supplies and picked up processed ore. She had been running this route for 12 years. She knew all the station managers. She knew which docks had the best repair facilities. She knew shortcuts through the asteroid fields that cut 2 days off the journey. Is it true? The station manager asked her. Humans are leaving? Ji-woo nodded. Recall order came yesterday. I have 3 more runs to make, then I head home. But who will run these routes? You are the only one who knows them. You will figure it out, Ji-woo said. She did not sound happy about it, but her voice was firm. You always do. In the military sectors, Commander Tae-yang oversaw the withdrawal of human forces from 47 joint defense installations. These bases protected the assembly's frontier borders. Dangerous space, pirates, raiders, and sometimes worse. The bases had human and alien troops working together. Humans usually handled tactical planning. They were good at thinking on their feet, adapting to unexpected situations. Tai-yang met with his Mantilian counterpart. We will be gone in 4 months, he said. You will have full control of the base. The Mantilian officer looked worried. Our tactical doctrine is different. We follow established procedures, you humans. You improvise. You will adapt, Tae-yang said. Follow your training. You will be fine. But he did not believe his own words. These frontier bases needed flexibility. The enemy did not follow patterns. You had to think creatively, try unexpected solutions. That was the human specialty. Still, it was not his problem anymore. Back on Varen Prime, Ambassador Quilks could not stop thinking about the vote. He reviewed files late into the night, records of human contributions to the assembly, medical breakthroughs, engineering solutions, diplomatic successes. The list was longer than he expected. His aide brought him tea. You should rest, Ambassador. Do you know how many critical positions humans hold? Quilks asked. I have been counting. Over 10,000 across assembly space. Station engineers, medical specialists, system analysts, supply chain managers, tactical advisors. They are only 2% of the population, the aide said. Surely we can fill those positions. Quilks was not sure. Humans had a way of ending up in difficult jobs. The positions that required creative thinking. The ones where standard procedures were not enough. They seemed to seek out problems that others avoided. What would happen when they were gone? He did not have an answer. Not yet. The humans continued their preparations. They were quiet about it, professional. They trained their replacements, organized their departures, packed their belongings. 5 months later, the last human transport would leave assembly space. And then the silence would really begin. Engineer Sung Min wiped his hands on a cloth and looked at the young Korvac standing next to him. Tillix had 4 arms and green skin that changed shades when he was nervous. Right now, he was very pale green. "Remember," Sung Min said, pointing at the life support panel, "the pressure sensor in Section 7 always reads 3% low. You need to add that in your head. The computer does not know to adjust for it." Tillix nodded and made a note on his datapad. He had been making notes for 3 months now. His datapad was full of them. "And the carbon scrubbers in the East Wing," Sung Min continued. "They cycle every 6 hours according to the schedule, but they actually need cycling every 5.5 hours. If you wait the full 6, pressure builds up and they jam." "Why not reprogram the schedule?" Tillix asked. "I tried 15 years ago," Sung Min said. "The system rejected the change. Something about safety protocols. I reported it, never got fixed, so I just manually cycle them every 5.5 hours. Tillix made another note. His color shifted to an even paler green. They walked through the engineering section. Sung Min showed him 30 more little quirks. The water pump that made a clicking sound when it was about to fail. The air recycler that needed its filters changed 2 days before the indicator light came on. The backup generator that would not start unless you hit the panel in exactly the right spot. "This is a lot to remember," Tillix said quietly. "You will learn," Sung Min replied. "Just pay attention. Listen to the station. It will tell you when something is wrong." But Sung Min was not sure that was true. He had 15 years of experience. He knew this station like he knew his own home. Every sound, every vibration, every small detail. You could not teach that in 3 months, maybe not even in 3 years. Still, the recall order was clear. All humans leave. No exceptions. On the other side of the galaxy, pilot Jiwoo was making her final cargo run. Her ship, the Morning Wind, cut through space toward the Belter mining facility at grid reference Delta 7. She had made this run 200 times. She knew every asteroid in the field, every gravity well, every dangerous spot. Her co-pilot was a Vrelian named Croth. He had been with her for 2 years, good worker, quick learner. But he had never piloted through this asteroid field alone. "You are really leaving?" Croth asked as they approached the field. "Recall order," Jiwoo said. "All humans return home. The assembly made their choice." "But you know these routes. You trained all of us. Who will run the deliveries?" Jiwoo checked her navigation display. "The company will assign new pilots. You know the basics. You will be fine." Croth did not look convinced. "The basics, yes, but you know shortcuts. You know which asteroids shift their orbits. You know when the solar winds make the field dangerous." "You have all the data in the computer," Jiwoo said. "Data is not the same as experience." Jiwoo could not argue with that. She had learned these routes through trial and error, hundreds of small mistakes that taught her what worked and what did not. The computer data showed safe paths, but she knew faster paths, riskier paths that saved days of travel time. That knowledge came from actually flying, not from reading files. They made the delivery. The station manager, an old Fentari named Quos, met them at the dock. "Last delivery from the Morning Wind?" Quos asked. Jiwoo nodded. "Last one. My replacement should arrive next week." Quos looked sad. 37 years I have run this station. You are the most reliable pilot I have ever worked with, always on time, always finding a way, even when conditions were bad." "The new pilot will learn the routes," Jiwoo said. "Maybe," Quos replied, "but it took you 12 years to master them. How long will it take the next one?" Jiwoo had no answer. She loaded the processed ore and departed. As her ship pulled away from the station, she looked back one last time. She had grown to like these remote facilities. The people were tough, independent. They had to be this far from the core worlds, but they would have to manage without her now. Across the Assembly's military sectors, Commander Tae Yang was closing down human operations at Outpost Viridian. The base sat on the frontier border, the edge of civilized space. Beyond it was wild territory, pirates, slavers, and worse. The outpost kept them at bay. Tae Yang stood in the tactical center with General Thros, the Mantillion who would take full command when the humans left. "Your defensive strategy," Thros said, studying the displays. "It is very unconventional." Tae Yang smiled slightly. "It works. But it does not follow standard military doctrine. You position forces in unexpected locations. You change patrol patterns constantly. You set up false sensor readings to confuse raiders." "Raiders adapt," Tae Yang said. "If we follow predictable patterns, they learn them. We have to stay unpredictable." Thros looked uncomfortable. Mantillions liked order and structure. They had detailed military manuals covering every situation. Humans had manuals too, but they treated them more like suggestions than rules. "What do I do if raiders attack from an unexpected vector?" Thros asked. "Adapt," Tae Yang said simply. "Look at what they are doing. Think about what they want. Then do something they do not expect." "That is not very specific." "War is not specific, General. Every battle is different. You have good troops and good equipment. Trust your instincts." But Tae Yang knew Mantillions did not work that way. They followed procedures. They did what the manual said. That worked fine against enemies who also followed patterns. But frontier raiders were chaotic and unpredictable. Fighting them required flexibility. He hoped Thros would figure it out, but it was not his problem anymore. Back in the core worlds, Merchant So-Jin was closing her business. She ran the largest independent supply network in the Assembly. 200 planets relied on her company to move goods efficiently. She had spent 20 years building relationships, learning markets, creating supply chains that actually worked. Her office was full of boxes, files being packed away, contracts being terminated. Her assistant, a Korvax named Wellum, looked devastated. "What will happen to the network?" he asked. "Someone else will take it over," So-Jin said, sealing another box. "The Assembly will not let supply chains collapse. But you know all the connections. You know which suppliers are reliable. You know how to route around problems. You know who to call when shipments go missing." So-Jin paused. "You know all of that too. You have been with me for 8 years." "I know some of it," Wellum admitted. "But you know everything. All the little details, the relationships, the favors people owe, the workarounds for bureaucratic problems." So-Jin had built her network on personal relationships. She knew merchants on every major world. She knew dock managers, customs officials, transport pilots. When problems arose, and they always did, she knew who to call. She knew how to get things moving when they got stuck. That kind of knowledge did not transfer easily. You could not write it in a manual or put it in a database. It came from years of experience and building trust. "The Assembly will figure it out," she said. But she did not sound confident. All across Assembly space, similar scenes played out. Humans training replacements, humans packing belongings, humans saying quiet goodbyes. Some aliens begged them to stay. Some offered large amounts of money. A few planets tried to pass local laws allowing humans to remain as independent contractors. But Captain Dae-hyun's orders were absolute. All humans leave. The assembly made their decision, and humans would respect it. No exceptions, no special cases, complete withdrawal. Dr. Haewon stood in her laboratory on Varen Prime. She had worked here for 23 years. Most of her research staff were aliens, good scientists, smart and dedicated, but she was the one who designed the experiments. She was the one who had the creative ideas that opened new research paths. Her replacement, a Vrelian named Thes, watched her pack equipment. "The particle acceleration project," Thes said nervously. "You said it was close to a breakthrough." "The data is all in the computer," Haewon replied. "Continue the experiments as scheduled. You will get results." "But what if the results are unexpected? What if we need to adjust the approach?" "Then you adjust," Haewon said. "You are a good scientist, Thes. Trust your training." Thes did not look reassured. Haewon knew why. Scientific research was not just about following procedures. It was about intuition. About recognizing patterns, about making creative leaps. Sometimes you had to try things that seemed illogical. You had to take risks. That was how breakthroughs happened. Humans were good at taking risks. On the final day of the 5th month, the last human transport prepared to leave assembly space. Captain Dae-hyun stood on the bridge, watching the departure schedule. Thousands of ships had already left. Millions of humans had returned to their home territories. Ambassador Quilks had come to see them off. He stood next to Dae-hyun, looking at the view screen showing the planet below. "You never argued," Quilks said quietly. "Not once. You just accepted the decision and left." "The assembly voted," Dae-hyun replied. "We respect the democratic process. Most species would have fought, filed appeals, staged protests. Humans just left." Dae-hyun turned to look at the Fentari ambassador. "Would arguing have changed anything? The vote was not close. The decision was made." Quilks had no answer. "We hold no anger," Dae-hyun continued. "The assembly feared us. Perhaps they were right to. We are different. We take risks. We break rules. We do not always fit well with others." "You also saved my home world," Quilks said softly. "You have saved many worlds." "And we caused problems too," Dae-hyun admitted. "The mining accident was our fault. 200 Vrelians died because a human team took risks they should not have taken." "So you just leave? No fight at all?" Dae-hyun looked back at the view screen. "We leave with dignity. That is all we have left." The transport engines powered up. Final clearance came from traffic control. The last human ship prepared to depart. Quilks watched them go. Something felt wrong, very wrong, but he could not explain what it was. Not yet. The transport jumped to faster-than-light speed, and just like that, humans were gone from assembly space. The silence they left behind was absolute. 3 months after the last human transport departed, Engineer Tillix was having a very bad day. He stood in the engineering bay of Korvac's Ring Station, staring at the life support panel. Alarms were blinking. Red lights filled the display. The air pressure in Section 12 was dropping. He checked his notes. Sungmin had taught him so much. But this problem was not in his notes. The pressure sensor showed normal readings in the main line. The backup systems showed green. Everything looked fine according to the computer. But people in Section 12 were reporting difficulty breathing. Tillix called his supervisor. "We have a pressure problem in Section 12, but I cannot find the cause." "Run a full diagnostic," the supervisor said. Tillix had already run 3 diagnostics. All came back normal. He ran a 4th, still normal. But the complaints kept coming. The air was getting thinner. He remembered something Sung Min had said. "Listen to the station." It will tell you when something is wrong. But Tillix did not know how to listen. He knew how to read displays and run diagnostics. That was what they taught in engineering school. He started manually checking every valve and sensor in Section 12. It took 2 hours. Finally, he found it. A pressure regulator in a junction box. The computer said it was working fine. The sensor readings were normal. But when Tillix physically looked at it, he saw the problem. The valve was stuck halfway open. He replaced the valve. Pressure returned to normal. Crisis solved. But it had taken 2 hours. Sung-min would have found it in 20 minutes. Sung-min knew which parts failed most often. He knew which sensors could not be trusted. He knew the station. Tillix made a note in his data pad. Check Section 12 regulator monthly. Do not trust the sensor. But he wondered how many other things like this existed. How many small problems that the computer could not detect. How many quirks that only experience would teach him. On the other side of the station, a different problem was developing. The water recycling system was running slowly, not broken, just slow. The computer said everything was fine. But water pressure was down by 15% across the station. The new maintenance chief, a Mantillian named Vross, checked the system. All readings normal. He increased pump power. That helped a little, but not enough. He called in specialists. They ran tests for a week, found nothing wrong. What they did not know was that Sung-min had been manually adjusting filter change schedules for years. The official schedule said change filters every 30 days, but Sung-min changed them every 23 days. The filters would clog faster than the manufacturer claimed. It was a design flaw that was never fixed. Nobody knew about this except Sung-min. He never wrote it down. It was just something he did. A habit formed over 15 years. Now the filters were running past their real capacity. Water flow was suffering. Eventually, someone would figure it out. But how long would that take? Far away, at the Belter mining facility at Delta 7, pilot Croth was attempting his first solo run through the asteroid field. He had flown with Ji-woo for 2 years. He had watched her navigate hundreds of times. He thought he understood the route. He was wrong. The computer showed the safe navigation path. Croth followed it carefully. But the safe path took 6 days. Ji-woo always made the run in 4 days. She knew shortcuts, paths that were riskier but faster. She knew which asteroids had stable orbits and which ones drifted. She knew when solar wind made certain areas dangerous and when they were safe. Croth did not know any of this. He followed the safe path. 6 days. Station manager Quas was not happy. 6 days? Ji-woo made it in 4. I followed the designated route, Croth said defensively. The safe route, Quas replied. We need deliveries faster than that. The ore we mine needs to get to market quickly. Quality degrades over time. I can try to go faster next time, Croth offered. No, Quas said firmly. Follow the safe route. I would rather wait 6 days than lose a ship in the asteroids. But the delay meant problems. The mining facility produced ore on a schedule. Refined ore sat in storage, slowly degrading. Ships that used to arrive every 4 days now took 6. Storage filled up. Production slowed down. Profits dropped. Quas filed a complaint with the shipping company. They said they would look into it. But what could they do? Ji-woo was gone. The new pilots did not know the fast routes. Nobody did. At Outpost Viridian, General Thross was discovering that frontier defense was harder than he expected. Raiders had attacked 3 times in 2 months. Each time, Thross followed standard military doctrine. He positioned forces according to the manual. He set patrol patterns based on established strategy. He did everything correctly, and each time the raiders adapted. They probed his defenses, found his patterns, exploited weaknesses. Thross stopped them, but barely, and each attack was more successful than the last. His officers were worried. They are learning our tactics, one said. They know where our patrols will be. We are following proper procedure, Thross insisted. The defense manual has been proven over centuries. Against conventional enemies, another officer said. Raiders do not fight conventionally. They are unpredictable. Thros knew this was true. Commander Tae Yang had warned him, you have to stay unpredictable. But Thros did not know how to be unpredictable. Mantillian military training emphasized order and structure. You studied the manual. You learned the correct response to every situation. You followed the procedures. Being unpredictable meant abandoning procedures. That felt wrong, dangerous. What if he made a mistake? What if his improvisation failed? But following the manual was not working either. He called a meeting with his senior staff. Commander Tae Yang said we need to be unpredictable. We need to change our approach. Change it how? An officer asked. Thros had no answer. The manual did not have a section on being unpredictable. That was a contradiction in itself. They tried small changes. Altered patrol routes slightly, moved some defensive positions. It helped a little, but Thros knew they were just making minor adjustments to the same basic strategy. That was not what Tai Yang meant. Real unpredictability required creativity. It required thinking like the enemy, anticipating their adaptations, doing things that made no sense according to doctrine but worked anyway. Tai Yang had been good at that. He had an intuition for tactics that went beyond training. Thros did not have that intuition. He was trying to learn it, but you could not learn creativity from a book. Meanwhile, the raider attacks continued. Back in the core worlds, Merchant Sojin's supply network was falling apart. The assembly had assigned a large logistics company to take it over. They had resources, ships, and trained staff. Everything should have worked fine. It did not. The problem was not the big shipments. Those ran smoothly. If you needed 1,000 tons of grain moved from World A to World B, the logistics company handled it perfectly. They had systems for that, efficient procedures. But Sojin's network had handled thousands of small, unusual shipments, medical supplies that needed special temperature control, replacement parts that only 3 planets manufactured, perishable goods that required fast delivery. These irregular shipments did not fit standard procedures. Sojin had managed them through personal relationships and creative problem-solving. She knew which ship captains were reliable. She knew which customs officials would expedite paperwork for urgent shipments. She knew which merchants could provide rare items on short notice. The logistics company did not know these things. When unusual problems arose, they followed standard procedures, which meant delays, which meant shortages. A hospital on Vrelian 4 ran out of a critical medicine. The replacement shipment was stuck in customs on another world. Under Sojin's network, one call would have fixed it. She knew the customs chief. She had done favors for him in the past. He would have expedited the shipment. The logistics company filed the proper paperwork and waited for normal processing. That took 6 days. 3 patients died waiting. Nobody blamed the logistics company. They had followed all the rules, but the results were worse. Similar problems multiplied across the network. Small failures, nothing dramatic, just increasing inefficiency, goods taking longer to arrive, shortages becoming more common. Costs rising as companies had to use faster, more expensive shipping. The Assembly's Commerce Ministry received thousands of complaints. They investigated. They found that the logistics company was following all proper procedures. Everything was being done correctly. Yet somehow, the network was not working as well as it had under Sojin. The ministry did not understand why. On paper, the logistics company was more qualified, larger, better funded, more professional. But they did not have Sojin's 20 years of relationships and experience. They did not have her instinct for solving unusual problems. They had efficiency, but they did not have effectiveness. On Viran Prime, Dr. Haywan's replacement Thess was struggling with the particle acceleration project. The experiments were running as scheduled. The data was being collected. Everything looked normal. But the results were not what Haywan predicted. Something was wrong. Tess checked the calculations, recalibrated the equipment, ran the experiments again. Same results. She contacted Haywan, who had returned to human territory. The project is not working. The particles are not behaving as your model predicted. What are the energy readings? Haywan asked. Tess sent the data. Haywan studied it for a moment. Try reducing the magnetic containment by 8%. That is outside the safety parameters, Tess said. Yes, Haywan agreed. But the math suggests the particles need more freedom of movement. The containment might be interfering. I cannot reduce safety margins without authorization. That requires a review committee. That will take months. Haywan sighed. Then the project will stall. The breakthrough is right there, Tess. You just need to take a small risk. But Tess could not take that risk. It was against procedure. She filed a request for the review committee. And she waited. Months passed. The project sat idle. Eventually, the committee would approve the modification. But the breakthrough that could have happened in weeks would now take a year or more. Ambassador Quilks was collecting reports. Something was wrong across assembly space. Not one big crisis, just many small problems. Inefficiencies, delays, systems not working quite as well as they used to. He reviewed his files. Korvac's ring station having minor technical problems, supply networks running slower, frontier defense bases requesting additional support. Research projects stalling, trade routes becoming less efficient. Individually, each problem seemed minor, but together, they painted a concerning picture. Quilks called a meeting with other ambassadors who had voted against the expulsion. Are you seeing problems in your sectors? He asked. They all were. Small things, nothing catastrophic, but a growing sense that things were not working as smoothly as before. It has only been 3 months, one ambassador said. Perhaps it is just an adjustment period. Quilks was not sure. He pulled up statistics. Efficiency across assembly space was down by an average of 12%. Not terrible, but noticeable. And the trend was getting worse, not better. We need to monitor this carefully, Quilks said. He sent a report to the Assembly Council. It was polite and measured. He did not blame the human expulsion directly. He just noted the statistical trends and suggested they keep watching. Councillor Vreth dismissed the report. Minor adjustments, he said. Temporary issues. We are better off without human recklessness. But Quilks noticed that Vreth did not actually address any of the specific problems in the report. He just insisted everything was fine. In human territory, Administrator Yuna was collecting similar reports. Humans who had been monitoring assembly communications. They were seeing the same patterns Quilks saw. They are struggling, one analyst reported. Nothing catastrophic yet, but definite decline. Yuna nodded. She had expected this, not because humans were superior, but because humans had filled specific niches in assembly society, the difficult jobs. The positions that required flexibility and creative thinking. Those positions still existed, but the people filling them now did not have the same approach. They followed rules and procedures, which worked for routine problems, but when something unusual happened, they struggled. Do we offer help? The analyst asked. Yuna shook her head. The assembly made their decision. We respect it. If they want our help, they can ask. But she knew they would not ask. Not yet. Pride would keep them from admitting they needed the humans they had expelled. Not until things got much worse. 8 months after the humans left, Korvac's ring station experienced its first major crisis. Engineer Tillix was working the night shift when every alarm in the engineering bay started screaming at once. Life support failure, multiple sections. Pressure dropping fast. Tillix ran to the main control panel. His hands shook as he pulled up system diagnostics. Red warnings filled every screen. Cascade failure. Something had broken in the main air circulation system. and now other systems were failing in response. He tried the emergency protocols. Nothing worked. The failures were spreading too fast. Section 7 lost pressure, then Section 9, then Section 13. "Evacuate those sections," Tillix shouted into his communicator. "Get everyone out now." Klaxons blared throughout the station. People ran through corridors heading for emergency shelters. Tillix watched his screens in horror as more systems failed. He could not stop it. Everything he tried made no difference. The station master arrived in engineering. "What is happening?" "Cascade failure in life support," Tillix said, his voice cracking. "I cannot stop it. The failures are spreading too fast." "What would Sungmin do?" Tillix wanted to scream. How would he know what Sungmin would do? Sungmin had 15 years of experience. Tillix had trained for 3 months. Nothing in his training covered this, but he forced himself to think, to remember. Sungmin had said something about cascade failures, something about the backup systems. The backup systems. They were designed to take over if the main systems failed, but they had to be manually activated. Tillix had practiced this once during training. He ran to the backup control panel. His 4 hands moved quickly, entering the activation sequence. The backup systems came online. Air circulation resumed in the failing sections. The cascade stopped. Tillix collapsed against the panel, breathing hard. The crisis was over, but barely. The station master reviewed the damage. 10,000 people nearly died. If you had been 2 minutes slower activating the backups, we would have lost 3 entire sections. An investigation followed. Engineers studied the failure for weeks. They found the cause. A pressure regulator had failed, the same one Tillix had replaced 5 months ago. It had failed again, but this time it created a cascade effect that nearly destroyed the station. Why did the backup systems not activate automatically? The investigators asked. They are supposed to, Tillix explained. But Sungmin had noted in his records that the automatic activation was unreliable. He recommended always activating backups manually. I remembered that during the crisis. The investigators looked at each other. So the only reason 10,000 people did not die was because you remembered something a human engineer mentioned months ago. Tillix nodded. One investigator spoke quietly. How many other things did Sungmin know that nobody wrote down? How many other problems are waiting to happen? Nobody had an answer. The assembly ordered all major stations to conduct full safety audits. What they found was disturbing. Hundreds of systems across dozens of stations had similar issues, small problems that experienced engineers knew about and worked around. But that knowledge was not in the official records. It existed only in the minds of the engineers who had been there for years. Many of those engineers had been human. At Outpost Viridian, General Thross was facing his own crisis. Raiders had launched a major attack. 3 ships, heavily armed, attacking from different vectors simultaneously. Thross followed standard defensive protocol. He positioned forces to protect critical infrastructure. He established defensive perimeters. He called for reinforcements from nearby bases. Everything by the book. The raiders tore through his defenses. They seemed to know exactly where his forces would be. They exploited every predictable element of his strategy. One raider ship broke through and attacked the main power station. The outpost lost power. Shields went down. By the time reinforcements arrived, the raiders had disabled the outpost and escaped. No casualties, fortunately, but the outpost was crippled. Repairs would take months. The military command was furious. They sent inspectors to investigate. General Thross showed them his defensive plan. It followed doctrine perfectly. Every decision matched what the manual recommended. Then why did it fail? An inspector demanded. The raiders knew our doctrine, Thross admitted. They predicted our movements. So you need to be unpredictable. I do not know how, Thross said quietly. It was a difficult admission. I am trained to follow procedures. That is what makes a good officer. But these raiders require something different. They require improvisation, creative tactics, things that are not in the manual. The inspector was silent for a long moment. Commander Tae Yang held this outpost for 6 years. Raiders attacked dozens of times. None of those attacks succeeded. Tae Yang did not follow the manual, Thross said. He made up tactics as he went. He positioned forces in illogical places. He set traps. He thought like a raider. Can you do that? Thross shook his head. I am trying to learn, but it does not come naturally. Mantillians are not trained to think that way. Humans were, the inspector said. The military command debated what to do. They could reinforce Outpost Viridian with more troops and better equipment. But that would not solve the fundamental problem. The raiders were creative and unpredictable. Standard doctrine did not work against them. They needed creative officers. They needed people who could improvise. They needed humans. But the humans were gone. Across assembly space, trade was collapsing. The supply networks that Merchant So-Jin had maintained were failing, not completely. Basic goods still moved. But anything unusual or complicated was getting lost in the system. A farming world needed specialized equipment. Under So-Jin's network, that equipment would arrive in 2 weeks. Now it took 3 months. The planting season was missed. Crop yields dropped by 40%. A medical research facility needed rare chemical samples. So-Jin would have sourced them from 6 different suppliers and combined them into one shipment. The new logistics company treated each chemical as a separate order. 3 chemicals arrived. 3 others got lost in processing. The research stalled for 6 months. A colony world needed emergency supplies after a natural disaster. Food, medicine, temporary shelter. So-Jin would have coordinated dozens of suppliers and got everything there in days. The logistics company followed proper emergency procedures. The supplies arrived in 3 weeks. By then, 200 colonists had died. The Assembly Commerce Ministry was overwhelmed with complaints. They hired more staff. They wrote new procedures. They implemented new computer systems. Nothing helped. The problem was not the systems. The problem was that So-Jin's network had relied on relationships and experience, not just procedures. When something went wrong, she knew who to call. She knew how to work around problems. She had built trust with thousands of merchants and officials across the galaxy. You could not replace that with a computer system. Trade volume across the assembly dropped by 30%. Some worlds were facing shortages. Others had surpluses they could not sell. The economy was suffering. Councillor Vreth stood before the Assembly Council, trying to explain. These are temporary disruptions. The new systems need time to mature. Commerce will recover. Ambassador Quilk stood up. It has been 8 months. Things are getting worse, not better. We need to acknowledge what is happening. And what is happening, Ambassador? Vreth asked coldly. We expelled the humans, and now we are discovering how much we relied on them. They were 2% of our population, but they held critical positions across every sector. Engineering, logistics, defense, research. They were the people who solved difficult problems, who worked around broken systems, who improvised when procedures failed. We have replaced them, Vreth insisted. We have filled their positions, Quilks corrected. That is not the same as replacing them. The people in those positions now are competent. But they approach problems differently. They follow rules. Humans broke rules when rules did not work. Rules exist for a reason. Yes, Quilks agreed. And humans knew which rules could be broken safely. That was their gift. They understood the difference between necessary rules and arbitrary ones. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some councillors supported Quilks. Others defended Vreth. The debate went on for hours, but no decisions were made. Meanwhile, the problems continued. In the research sectors, dozens of projects had stalled. Dr. Haiwan's particle acceleration project was just one example. Across assembly space, human researchers had been leading innovative work. That work required risk-taking. trying new approaches, testing ideas that might fail. The scientists who replaced them were cautious. They followed safe research paths. They waited for approval before taking risks. That was proper procedure. But breakthroughs did not come from proper procedure. They came from taking chances. Research output dropped. Innovation slowed. The assembly was still producing good science, but the cutting-edge work had stopped. Ambassador Quilks compiled a comprehensive report. He documented failures across every sector: station malfunctions, defense failures, economic decline, research stagnation. The statistics were damning. He presented the report to the council. "We need to admit we made a mistake," he said. "The human expulsion has damaged the assembly. We need to invite them back." Councillor Vreth was furious. "Invite them back? After we expelled them? That would be humiliating." "Pride is less important than survival," Quilks replied. "Another 3 months like this and we will face real crisis. Multiple systems are on the edge of failure." "You are exaggerating." Quilks threw his datapad on the table. "Read the report, all of it. Then tell me I am exaggerating." Other councillors picked up the report. They read in silence. The evidence was overwhelming. The assembly was in trouble. One councillor spoke up. "Even if we wanted to invite humans back, would they come? We expelled them. They left peacefully. They have not complained or asked to return. They seem content to stay away." That was true. Human territory had been silent. No requests to rejoin, no offers to help. Nothing. The humans had accepted the assembly's decision and moved on with their lives. "We wronged them," another councillor said. "They owe us nothing." "But we need them," Quilks said. "Whether we want to admit it or not, we need them. The assembly is failing without them." The debate continued for days. Councillor Vreth fought hard to prevent any admission of failure, but the evidence was too strong. Station malfunctions, defense failures, economic problems, research stagnation, all documented, all getting worse. Finally, a vote was called. Should the assembly formally invite humanity to return? The vote passed. 44 species voted yes. Only 3 voted no. Vreth was one of the 3. The assembly would send a delegation to human territory. They would apologize. They would ask humans to return. They would offer whatever terms necessary, but nobody knew if the humans would accept. In human territory, Administrator Yu Na received the news. The assembly was sending a delegation. They wanted to talk about humans returning. She called Captain Dae-hyun. "The assembly wants us back." "I know," Dae-hyun said. "I have been monitoring their communications. They are struggling." "Do we go back?" Dae-hyun was quiet for a long moment. "Not on the same terms. We left with dignity. We will return with dignity. But we will not return as junior members who can be expelled whenever they fear us. If we go back, it will be as equals. They may not accept those terms." "Then we stay here," Dae-hyun said simply. "We have built good lives in our own territory. We do not need the assembly. They need us." Yuna smiled. "You sound very confident." "I am confident we know our worth," Dae-hyun replied, "even if it took the assembly 8 months to discover it." The delegation was on its way. Soon, humans and aliens would meet again, and this time, the conversation would be very different. The delegation ship entered human territory 14 months after the expulsion vote. Ambassador Quilks led the group. With him were representatives from 23 assembly species, the largest diplomatic mission in recent history. They had sent a message ahead, a formal request for a meeting. The humans had replied with a simple acknowledgement. Yes, they would meet, nothing more. The delegation ship docked at Meridian Station, the main hub of human outer territories. Quilk stepped off the ship and found himself in a bustling station that felt different from assembly facilities. Less formal, more improvised, but it worked smoothly. Captain Dae-hyun waited at the dock. Next to him stood Dr. Hae-won and several other human officials. They looked calm and professional. No anger, no satisfaction at the Assembly's troubles, just quiet dignity. "Ambassador Quilks," Dae-hyun said, bowing slightly. "Welcome to Meridian Station." "Thank you for meeting with us," Quilks replied. He felt nervous, which was unusual for him. He had conducted hundreds of diplomatic meetings, but this one felt different. "I know we have much to discuss." "Indeed," Dae-hyun agreed. "Please come to the conference room." They walked through the station. Quilks noticed human workers everywhere. Engineers, technicians, merchants, all busy with their tasks. The station had a lived-in quality, comfortable, functional. The conference room was simple. A large table, chairs, nothing fancy. The delegation sat on one side. The humans sat on the other. Quilks began. "Captain Dae-hyun, Dr. Hae-won, honored representatives, the Assembly has sent us to discuss the possibility of humanity rejoining civilized space." "We never left civilized space," Hae-won said gently. "We left Assembly space. There is a difference." Quilks nodded. "You are correct. I apologize. Let me be direct. The Assembly made a mistake. We expelled humanity based on fear. We worried about your unpredictability, your tendency to break rules, your wars and conflicts. We believed removing humans would make the Assembly safer and more stable." "And did it?" Dae-hyun asked. Quilks looked uncomfortable. "No, the opposite happened. In the 14 months since your departure, the Assembly has experienced significant problems across all sectors." He activated a display screen. Statistics appeared. Station malfunctions, defense failures, economic decline, research stagnation, the same data from his report to the Council. "We did not realize how deeply integrated humans were in our society," Quilks continued. "You held 2% of the population, but you held critical positions, the difficult jobs, the ones that required creative problem-solving. Without you, those positions are filled but not functioning well." "You have competent people," Hae-won observed. "They follow procedures. They do their jobs correctly." "Yes," Quilks agreed. "But correct is not the same as effective. We are learning that following rules perfectly does not solve unusual problems. Sometimes you need to break rules, or ignore them, or create new ones. Humans were good at knowing when to do that." One of the other delegates, a Mantillian general, spoke up. "Our frontier defenses have failed repeatedly. Raiders attack with impunity. We follow proper military doctrine, but it does not work against unpredictable enemies. We need officers who can improvise." Another delegate added, "Our supply networks are collapsing. We have professional logistics companies running them, but they cannot handle unusual situations, complex shipments, emergency needs. The networks are less than half as efficient as they were under human management." Quilks let his colleagues speak. They all told similar stories. Systems that worked on paper but failed in practice. Rules that were followed but did not solve problems. A growing sense that the Assembly had lost something important. Finally, Quilks spoke again. "We come here to formally apologize. The Assembly wronged humanity. We judged you unfairly. We expelled you for being different, not for being dangerous. We ask that you consider returning." Dae-hyun listened carefully. Then he spoke. "You apologize. We appreciate that. It takes courage to admit mistakes, but you must understand something. We did not fight the expulsion because we respected your decision. We left peacefully because that was the honorable thing to do. We have built good lives here in our own territory. We are content. But the Assembly needs you," Quilks said. "That is your problem, not ours," Hae-won said, not unkindly but firmly. "You made a choice. You asked us to leave. We respected that choice. Now you ask us to return. Why should we?" The delegation looked uncomfortable. They had expected this to be difficult. but hearing it stated so directly was still painful. A Vrelian delegate spoke. "We are prepared to offer compensation. Payment for the losses you suffered during the expulsion. Financial incentives for those who return." Dae-hyun shook his head. "Money is not the issue. Respect is the issue. You expelled us. If we simply return when you realize you need us, what stops you from expelling us again the next time we make you uncomfortable?" "We would never," the Vrelian began. "You said that before," Dae-hyun interrupted. "The Assembly promised humans equal treatment, equal rights. Then one mining accident happened, and you voted us out. What guarantee do we have that it will not happen again?" Quilks had prepared for this. "The Assembly Council has drafted a new charter. If humans return, you would have full voting rights, independent territorial sovereignty, seats on all major councils. You would not be junior members. You would be equal partners." He pushed a document across the table. Dae-hyun picked it up and read it carefully. Hae-won looked over his shoulder. They took their time. "This is better," Dae-hyun admitted. "But words on paper are not enough. The first charter also promised fair treatment. You ignored it when fear overcame reason." "What would convince you?" Quilks asked. Dae-hyun thought for a moment. "A formal acknowledgement, not just an apology, a public statement from the Assembly Council. Humans were not expelled for being dangerous. We were expelled for being misunderstood, for being different, for approaching problems in ways that made you uncomfortable. That must be acknowledged publicly." "Councillor Vreth will never agree to that," a delegate said. "Then we do not return," Dae-hyun said simply. The delegation conferred among themselves. Quiet, urgent discussions. Finally, Quilk spoke again. "I believe we can get that acknowledgement. Vreth's faction is weak now. The failures of the past 14 months have discredited him. Most of the council wants humans back. They will agree to your terms." "Most is not all," Hae-won pointed out. "What about the 3 species that voted against inviting us back?" "One of them was Vreth's species," Quilk said. "The other 2 are small populations that rarely participate in assembly politics. They will not block this." Dae-hyun looked at his colleagues. They had a brief, silent conversation. Then he turned back to Quilks. "We will consider your offer, but we need time. We will not rush this decision. You rushed the expulsion. We will not rush the return." "How much time?" Quilks asked. 60 days, Dae-hyun said. "We will discuss it among ourselves. We will consult with human communities across our territory. Then we will give you our answer." "The Assembly's problems are growing worse each day," a delegate said urgently. "Then perhaps you should have considered that before expelling us," Hae-won replied. Her voice was still gentle, but her point was sharp. Quilk stood up. 60 days. We will wait. Thank you for hearing us, Captain. We know we have no right to ask for your help after what we did. But we are asking anyway." Dae-hyun stood as well. "We will consider it carefully. That is all we can promise." The delegation returned to their ship. As they prepared to depart, Quilks looked back at Meridian Station. Humans moved about their business, living their lives. They seemed happy, content. They did not need the assembly. "Do you think they will come back?" one of the delegates asked. "I do not know," Quilks admitted. "We hurt them deeply. We judge them without understanding them. If I were them, I would tell us to handle our own problems." "But they are not us," another delegate said. "Humans are strange. They forgive easily. They move forward instead of holding grudges." Quilks was not sure about that. Humans did forgive, but they also had pride and dignity. They would not come back just because the assembly needed them. They would come back on their own terms, or not at all. The 60 days passed slowly. In assembly space, problems continued to mount. Another station had a major malfunction. Raiders attacked 2 more frontier outposts. Supply shortages spread to 15 more worlds. Research programs shut down for lack of progress. Counselor Vreth tried to maintain that everything was fine, that the problems were temporary, that the assembly did not need humans. But fewer and fewer counselors listened to him. The evidence was overwhelming. The Assembly Council met to discuss the delegation's report. Quilks presented everything. The conversations with Dae-hyun and Hai-wan, the human demands, the need for a public acknowledgement. They want us to admit we were wrong, Vreth said, to humiliate ourselves. They want us to tell the truth, Quilks corrected. We expelled them because they made us uncomfortable, not because they were dangerous. That is the truth. We should say it. The debate was fierce, but in the end, the vote was not close. 41 species supported the public acknowledgement, 6 opposed. Vreth lost again. The statement was drafted carefully. It acknowledged that humanity's expulsion was based on misunderstanding and fear, not on legitimate danger. It admitted that human creativity and flexibility were valuable assets, not threats. It recognized that diversity of approach made the assembly stronger, not weaker. It was broadcast across assembly space, every world, every station. The assembly formally admitted it had been wrong. In human territory, Dae-hyun and Hai-wan watched the broadcast. Around them, other humans did the same. They saw Quilks read the statement. They saw the Assembly Council members standing behind him, supporting the message. They actually did it, Hai-wan said quietly. Dae-hyun nodded. They are desperate, but they also learned something. That is worth considering. Over the 60 days, humans across their territory had debated the issue. Some wanted to return immediately. They missed their homes in assembly space, their friends, their work. Others wanted to stay away. The expulsion had hurt. Why risk it again? The debates were long and passionate, but eventually a consensus emerged. Humans would return, but not as they had left. They would return as equals, with guarantees, with respect. Dae-hyun sent a message to Quilks. The humans accept your offer. We will return to assembly space. We agree to the new charter. We expect the assembly to honor its commitments. The response came quickly. We will honor them. Welcome home. But Hai-wan looked at Dae-hyun after the message was sent. Is it really home anymore? Dae-hyun considered the question. Perhaps not the same home we left, but we can build a new one. Together with the assembly, as equals this time. The return took months to organize. Humans did not rush back. They moved carefully, deliberately. They negotiated detailed agreements. They established clear boundaries. They made sure the new relationship was built on solid ground. Engineer Sung-min returned to Korvac's ring station. Tillix nearly cried when he saw him. I tried my best, Tillix said, but I am not you. I do not have your experience. Sung-min smiled. You did better than you think. You saved the station during the cascade failure. That took good instincts. Instincts I learned from you. Then learn more, Sung-min said. We will work together this time. Not you replacing me, us working as a team. That became the pattern across assembly space. Humans did not return to reclaim their old positions. They worked alongside their replacements, teaching, sharing knowledge, building partnerships. Pilot Ji-woo returned to her cargo routes, but now she flew with Kroth as her co-pilot, not her replacement, her partner. She taught him the shortcuts, the tricks, the intuition that came from years of flying. Commander Tae-yang returned to Outpost Viridian. General Thross welcomed him with obvious relief. Teach me, Thross said. Teach me how to think creatively, how to be unpredictable. Tae-yang smiled. It will take time, but yes, I will teach you, and you will teach me patience and discipline. We will learn from each other. Merchant Sojin rebuilt her supply network, but this time she trained dozens of aliens in her methods. She shared her contacts. She explained her approach. The network became stronger because it was no longer dependent on one person. Dr. Hei-Wan returned to her laboratory. Tess was overjoyed. "The particle project. We have been waiting for you." "Then let us work on it together," Hei-Wan said. "You have good instincts, Tess. You just need confidence to trust them." Ambassador Quilks met with Dae-Hyun one more time, months after the humans returned. They stood in the assembly hall, watching delegates from all species working together. "Did you know this would happen?" Quilks asked. "Did you know we would fail without you?" Dae-Hyun thought carefully before answering. "We hoped you would not fail. We never wanted the assembly to suffer. But we knew our worth, even if you did not. We knew what we contributed. We just waited for you to discover it. And if we had not? If we had managed without you? Then we would have been happy in our own territory," Dae-Hyun said. "We do not need validation from others. We know who we are." Quilks nodded slowly. "That is the difference, I think. We needed you more than you needed us, but now perhaps we need each other equally." "Perhaps," Dae-Hyun agreed. "Time will tell." The assembly moved forward, different now, changed by the absence and return of humanity. The relationship was more balanced, more respectful, built on recognition of what each species brought to the community. Humans still broke rules when rules needed breaking. They still took risks. They still made others uncomfortable sometimes. But now the assembly understood. Diversity was not a threat. It was strength. And if humans ever made the assembly uncomfortable again, there would be no more expulsion votes. There would be conversations, understanding, mutual respect. Because the assembly had learned an important lesson. Silence could be louder than any argument. Absence could be more powerful than presence. And sometimes the most important people were the ones you did not notice until they were gone. The humans had left in silence. And in that silence, the galaxy had finally learned to listen.